Zorax watched the simulation intently, his eyes tracking every move of the young cadet. Jace moved with a fluid grace that belied his age, his reflexes sharper than any recruit the commander had ever seen. The boy navigated the complex urban battlefield with ease, anticipating enemy movements and adapting his strategy on the fly. As the simulated skirmish intensified, Jace's performance only seemed to improve. He effortlessly coordinated his team, leading them through a series of daring maneuvers that caught their opponents off guard. His tactical decisions were swift and decisive, each one leading to a critical advantage on the field. Zorax leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. There was something about the way Jace processed information, the way he seemed to predict the flow of battle, that set him apart. It was as if the boy possessed a sixth sense, an uncanny ability to read the minds of his enemies and allies alike. The commander's thoughts raced as he considered the implications. If Jace's talents were merely the result of training, then the Alliance's instructors were doing something revolutionary. But deep down, Zorax suspected there was more to the story. The boy's skills were too innate, too instinctive to be the product of mere instruction. As the simulation reached its climax, Jace executed a series of moves that left even Zorax stunned. The cadet single-handedly dispatched a dozen enemy combatants, his movements a blur of speed and precision. His final action was a daring leap from a collapsing building, a maneuver that should have been impossible for someone so young and inexperienced. But Jace landed with cat-like grace, rolling to his feet and snapping off a salute to the observation deck. Zorax found himself returning the gesture, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Whatever the source of Jace's abilities, there was no denying that the boy was special. The simulation ended, and the recruits began to file out of the training area. Jace lingered for a moment, his gaze meeting Zorax's through the observation window. In that brief instant, the commander felt a flicker of something pass between them, a recognition, perhaps, of the boy's untapped potential. Zorax knew he couldn't let this mystery go unresolved. He had to understand what made Jace tick, had to uncover the truth behind his extraordinary skills. The Alliance's future might depend on it. The commander turned to his aide, a young lieutenant who had been watching the simulation with rapt attention. "Get me everything we have on Cadet Jace," Zorax ordered, his voice low and urgent. "Training records, psychological evaluations, medical histories. I want it all." The aide nodded crisply and hurried off to carry out the command. Zorax turned back to the now empty simulation chamber, his mind whirling with possibilities. He had a feeling that Jace's story was just beginning, and that the boy's destiny was intertwined with the fate of the galaxy itself. As he made his way back to his office, Zorax couldn't shake the sense that he was standing on the precipice of something momentous. The Alliance had always looked to the stars for its heroes, but perhaps this time their savior would come from closer to home. Perhaps in the form of an unassuming human cadet with abilities beyond reckoning. The commander settled into his chair, his gaze drifting to the stars outside his window. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. Jace was the key to unlocking it, and Zorax would stop at nothing to ensure that the boy's potential was realized, for the sake of the Alliance and all who called the galaxy home. As Zorax pored over Jace's files, the mystery only seemed to deepen. The boy's early life was a blank slate, with no records of his birth parents or his upbringing before the age of 5. It was as if he had simply appeared out of nowhere, a fully formed prodigy with no past to speak of. The commander rubbed his temples, frustration mounting as he searched for any clue that might shed light on Jace's origins. He had hoped that the cadet's training records would provide some insight, but even those were curiously sparse. Jace had excelled in every program he had been placed in, but the instructor's notes were vague and uninformative, offering little more than generic praise for the boy's natural talents. Zorax leaned back in his chair, his eyes drifting to the holographic display that dominated his office wall. The stars twinkled back at him, their light cold and distant. He couldn't shake the feeling that the answer to Jace's mystery lay out there somewhere, buried in the vast expanse of the galaxy. A chime at the door startled him from his reverie. "Enter," he called out, straightening in his seat. The door slid open to reveal his aide, a datapad clutched in her hand. "Commander," she said, her voice tight with excitement, "I think I may have found something." Zorax motioned for her to continue, his heart quickening in his chest. "I was digging through some old Alliance records, and I came across a file that had been heavily redacted. It took some work, but I was able to recover a few fragments of information." She handed him the datapad, her fingers trembling slightly. The commander scanned the file, his eyes widening as he read the scattered bits of text. Project Genesis, Human Enhancement, Alien DNA Integration. The words leaped out at him, each one a tantalizing clue to the puzzle that was Jace. "This is incredible," Zorax breathed, his mind racing with the implications. If this is true, then Jace may be more than just a gifted cadet. He could be the product of a secret experiment, one that the Alliance has gone to great lengths to cover up. The aide nodded, her expression grave. "There's more, sir. The file mentions a group of scientists who were involved in the project. Most of their names have been redacted, but there's one that appears multiple times. Dr. Ilara Voss." Zorax's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "Voss. I know that name. She was a brilliant geneticist, but she disappeared years ago. The Alliance claimed she had died in a lab accident, but there were always rumors that there was more to the story." He stood abruptly, his chair clattering to the floor behind him. "We need to find her. If anyone can tell us the truth about Project Genesis and Jace's role in it, it's Voss." The aide hesitated, her expression uncertain. "But sir, if she's been in hiding all this time, she may not want to be found. And if the Alliance is truly behind this, they may not take kindly to us digging into their secrets." Zorax met her gaze, his jaw set with determination. "I don't care about the risks. If Jace is who I think he is, then he may be the key to our survival. The Alliance needs him, whether they realize it or not." He strode towards the door, his mind already charting the course ahead. "We start with Voss' last known location. If we can pick up her trail, maybe we can unravel this mystery before it's too late." As he stepped out into the corridor, Zorax couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement mingled with trepidation. He was on the cusp of discovering something extraordinary, something that could change the course of history. And at the center of it all was a boy named Jace, a cadet with the power to shape the destiny of the galaxy. Commander Zorax strode through the halls of the Alliance training facility, his heart pounding with anticipation. He had arranged a meeting with Jace under the guise of congratulating the young cadet on his exceptional performance, but in truth, he hoped to glean some insight into the boy's mysterious past. As he entered the small conference room, Zorax was struck by how unassuming Jace appeared. The cadet stood at attention, his posture perfect, but there was a softness to his features that belied his youth. He seemed almost shy, his eyes downcast as he greeted the commander with a crisp salute. "At ease, cadet," Zorax said, motioning for Jace to take a seat. "I wanted to commend you on your outstanding work in the simulations. Your skills are truly remarkable." Jace's cheeks flushed with pride, but he remained humble. "Thank you, sir. I've worked hard to get where I am, but I know I still have a lot to learn." Zorax nodded, studying the boy's face for any flicker of recognition or unease. "I'm curious, cadet. Where did you acquire such advanced combat techniques? Your instructors tell me that you seem to have a natural aptitude for strategy and tactics." Jace shrugged, his expression guarded. "I've always been interested in military history, sir. I suppose I just picked up a few things from studying the great commanders of the past." The commander leaned forward, his gaze intent. "And your reflexes, your ability to anticipate your opponent's moves. Those are skills that can't be learned from books alone." For a moment, Jace looked uncertain. I'm not sure, sir. I've just always had good instincts, I guess. My instructors say it's a gift." Zorax's mind raced, searching for a way to probe deeper without arousing suspicion. "Tell me, Cadet, what do you remember of your life before the Alliance? Your family, your home?" Jace's expression clouded, and he looked away. "I don't remember much, sir. I was orphaned at a young age, and the Alliance has been my home ever since. I don't like to dwell on the past." The commander's heart ached for the boy, but he couldn't let sentiment cloud his judgment. He needed answers, and he needed them now. "Jace," he said softly, using the cadet's first name for the first time, "I need you to be honest with me. Is there anything about your abilities that you haven't told your instructors? Anything that might seem unusual?" The boy's eyes widened, and for a moment, Zorax thought he saw a flicker of fear in their depths. "No, sir. I don't know what you mean." Zorax sighed, leaning back in his chair. He could tell that Jace was holding something back, but he couldn't force the truth from him. Not yet, anyway. "Very well, Cadet. You're dismissed." Jace stood, his relief palpable. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." As the boy left the room, Zorax stared after him, his mind whirling with possibilities. Jace's story didn't add up, but he couldn't put his finger on why. There was something about the cadet that defied explanation, something that went beyond mere talent or training. The commander knew he would have to tread carefully. If his suspicions were correct, then Jace was more than just a gifted soldier. He was a living weapon, one that could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. And if the wrong people discovered his secret, the consequences could be catastrophic. Zorax rose from his chair, his resolve hardening. He would find the truth, no matter the cost, and he would protect Jace, even if it meant defying the very organization he had sworn to serve. The fate of the Alliance, and perhaps the entire galaxy, depended on it. Zorax's investigation into Project Genesis consumed his every waking moment. He pored over classified files, chased down leads, and called in every favor he had accumulated over his long career. But the deeper he dug, the more dangerous the trail became. It seemed that the Alliance had gone to great lengths to bury the truth of the project. Records had been erased, witnesses silenced, and entire facilities wiped from existence. But Zorax was nothing if not persistent, and he refused to let the truth slip through his fingers. Late one night, as he sat hunched over his desk, a message pinged on his private terminal. It was encrypted, the source untraceable, but something about it made Zorax's heart race. With trembling fingers, he entered his decryption key and watched as the message unfolded before his eyes. "Commander Zorax," it began, "if you're reading this, then you've stumbled upon a secret that could change the course of history. Project Genesis was real, and its legacy lives on in the form of Cadet Jace and others like him." Zorax's breath caught in his throat as he read on, his eyes widening with each revelation. The message spoke of a clandestine effort to create the ultimate soldier, a being with the strength and reflexes of a warrior race, and the strategic mind of a master tactician. The project had been born out of desperation, a last-ditch attempt to turn the tide of a losing war. But as with all such endeavors, Project Genesis had come with a terrible cost. The procedures were risky, the outcomes unpredictable. Many of the test subjects had died, their bodies ravaged by the alien DNA that had been grafted onto their own. And those who survived were forever changed, their humanity sacrificed on the altar of military expedience. Jace, it seemed, was one of the lucky ones. His body had accepted the alien enhancements, granting him abilities that bordered on the superhuman. But the message warned that he was not alone. There were others like him scattered throughout the Alliance, hidden in plain sight, their true nature known only to a select few. Zorax's mind reeled with the implications. If the message was true, then Jace was more than just a gifted cadet. He was a living weapon, a product of the Alliance's darkest secrets. And if those secrets were ever to come to light, the consequences would be unimaginable. The commander's fingers flew over the keys as he composed a response, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. He needed to know more, needed to find the others like Jace, and uncover the full extent of Project Genesis. But he also knew that he was treading on dangerous ground. If the Alliance discovered what he was doing, his career, and perhaps his life, would be forfeit. But then Zorax's thoughts turned to Jace himself. The boy was innocent, a pawn in a game that he didn't even know he was playing. He deserved to know the truth about his origins, deserved to choose his own path in life. And so, with a sense of grim determination, Zorax hit the send button and watched as his response disappeared into the digital ether. He didn't know where the trail would lead him, or what horrors he might uncover along the way. But one thing was certain: he would not rest until he had uncovered the full truth of Project Genesis, no matter the cost. The Alliance had played God, and now it was time to face the consequences of its hubris. As he turned off his terminal and stared out into the starry expanse of space, Zorax felt a sense of clarity wash over him. He was a soldier, a guardian of the innocent, and he would not let the Alliance's sins go unpunished. He would find Jace and the others like him, and together they would forge a new destiny for the galaxy, free from the shadows of the past. Armed with the knowledge of Project Genesis, Zorax knew he had to confront Jace with the truth. He summoned the young cadet to his office, his heart heavy with the weight of the revelations he was about to share. Jace arrived promptly, his posture perfect, and his eyes bright with curiosity. "You wanted to see me, sir?" he asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his gaze. Zorax motioned for him to sit, his own hands trembling slightly as he gathered his thoughts. "Cadet," he began, his voice low and somber, "what I'm about to tell you may come as a shock, but I need you to listen carefully and keep an open mind." Jace nodded, his brow furrowing with concern. "Of course, sir. What's this about?" The commander took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation to come. "It's about your abilities, Jace. Your incredible reflexes, your strategic mind, your uncanny ability to anticipate your opponent's moves. I believe that these skills are not the result of mere training or natural talent, but rather something far more extraordinary." He paused, gauging Jace's reaction. The boy's eyes had widened, his lips parted in surprise. "What do you mean, sir?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zorax leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I have reason to believe that you are the product of a secret Alliance project, one that sought to create the ultimate soldier by integrating alien DNA into human subjects. The project was called Genesis, and it was supposed to have been terminated years ago. But I believe that you and others like you are living proof that it continued in the shadows." Jace's face drained of color, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. That's impossible," he stammered, his voice shaking. "I'm just a normal cadet, sir. I've worked hard to get where I am, but I'm not some kind of superhuman." The commander shook his head, his expression sympathetic. "I know it's a lot to take in, Jace, but the evidence is compelling. Your abilities, your mysterious past, it all points to something far greater than mere coincidence." He reached into his desk drawer and withdrew a small device, holding it out to the stunned cadet. "This is a portable gene sequencer. If you allow me to take a small sample of your DNA, we can confirm once and for all whether my suspicions are correct. But the choice is yours, Jace. I won't force you to do anything against your will." Jace stared at the device, his eyes haunted. For a long moment he said nothing, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Then, slowly, he reached out and took the sequencer from Zorax's hand. I need to know the truth, sir," he said, his voice barely audible. "If what you're saying is true, then everything I thought I knew about myself is a lie. I need to understand who, or what, I really am." Zorax nodded, his heart aching for the young man before him. "I understand, Jace, and I promise you, whatever the results may be, I will stand by you. You are not alone in this." As Jace pressed the sequencer to his skin and watched as it flickered to life, Zorax felt a sense of trepidation wash over him. He knew that the truth would be painful, perhaps even devastating, but he also knew that it was necessary. Jace deserved to know the reality of his existence, no matter how harsh it might be. And so, together, they waited for the results that would change everything. The weight of the galaxy hanging in the balance. For better or for worse, the truth of Project Genesis was about to be revealed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The revelation of Jace's true nature sent shockwaves through the Alliance training facility. Rumors spread like wildfire, whispers of secret experiments and superhuman soldiers echoing through the halls. But even as Jace struggled to come to terms with his new reality, a far greater threat loomed on the horizon. It began with a series of strange readings on the facility's long-range sensors, a pattern of energy signatures that defied explanation. At first, the Alliance command dismissed them as mere anomalies, glitches in the system that would soon resolve themselves. But as the readings grew stronger and more frequent, a sense of unease began to spread through the ranks. And then, without warning, the attack came. A fleet of ships, unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen, dropped out of hyperspace and unleashed a barrage of devastating weaponry on the facility. The shields buckled under the onslaught, alarms blaring as the station rocked with each impact. In the chaos of the attack, Jace found himself thrust into the heart of the battle. His fellow cadets scrambled to their stations, desperately trying to mount a defense against the overwhelming force arrayed against them. But Jace knew that their efforts were futile. The enemy had come for him, and him alone. With a sense of grim determination, Jace raced through the corridors of the facility, his mind racing as he tried to formulate a plan. He knew that his abilities, the very thing that made him a target, were also his greatest weapon. But he had never fully unleashed them before, had never dared to tap into the full extent of his power. As he rounded a corner, he found himself face to face with a squad of enemy soldiers, their weapons trained on him with deadly intent. Jace felt a surge of fear, but also a strange sense of calm. He knew what he had to do. Closing his eyes, he reached deep within himself, tapping into the well of psionic energy that had always been there, waiting to be unleashed. He felt it surge through his body, a crackling wave of power that made his skin tingle and his hair stand on end. And then, with a wordless cry, he let it loose. A blast of pure mental force erupted from his mind, slamming into the enemy soldiers with the force of a speeding freight train. They crumpled like paper dolls, their weapons clattering to the ground as they fell. Jace stood there, panting, his eyes wide with shock and awe. He had never felt such power before, had never imagined that he was capable of such destruction. But even as he marveled at his own abilities, he knew that the battle was far from over. He raced through the facility, his mind reaching out to sense the thoughts and emotions of those around him. He could feel the fear and desperation of his fellow cadets, the cold determination of the enemy soldiers, and something else too, a presence that was both familiar and alien, a mind that pulsed with the same psionic energy that flowed through his own veins. It was Commander Zorax, he realized with a start. The old soldier had always been there, watching over him, guiding him. And now, in the heat of battle, Jace could sense the truth. Zorax was like him, a product of the same twisted experiments that had given birth to his own powers. Together, they rallied the remaining cadets, their combined psionic might turning the tide of the battle. The enemy soldiers fell before them like wheat before the scythe, their minds shattered by the sheer force of Jace and Zorax's will. But even as the facility lay in ruins around them, Jace knew that the true fight was just beginning. The secret of his existence was out, and there would be those who would stop at nothing to control him, to use him as a weapon in their own wars. But with Zorax by his side, Jace knew that he would never be alone. Together, they would forge a new path, a destiny that was theirs and theirs alone. And the galaxy would tremble before the might of the Genesis warriors, the living weapons that would reshape the stars themselves. In the aftermath of the attack, Commander Zorax knew that the time for secrecy was over. The existence of Project Genesis and the superhuman abilities of Jace and others like him could no longer be hidden from the Alliance leadership. The very future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the truth had to be brought to light. With Jace by his side, Zorax stood before the assembled ranks of the Alliance High Command, his voice steady and unwavering as he revealed the shocking reality of the Genesis warriors. He spoke of the clandestine experiments, the fusion of human and alien DNA, and the incredible powers that had been unlocked as a result. At first, the commanders were silent, their faces a mask of shock and disbelief. But as Zorax laid out the evidence before them, the classified files, the genetic test results, the very existence of Jace himself, a murmur of unease began to ripple through the room. Some called for the immediate termination of the Genesis project, arguing that such power was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. Others saw the warriors as a potential asset, a weapon that could be harnessed to ensure the Alliance's dominance over the galaxy. But Zorax knew that neither option was acceptable. The Genesis warriors were not mere tools to be used and discarded at will. They were living, breathing individuals, each with their own hopes and dreams, their own right to self-determination. He argued passionately for a third way, a path that would allow the warriors to take their place as equals within the Alliance. They would be trained and guided, their powers honed and directed towards the greater good. But they would also be given the freedom to choose their own destiny, to forge their own path in the universe. Jace stepped forward then, his voice soft, but filled with a quiet conviction. He spoke of his own struggles, of the confusion and fear that had gripped him when he first learned of his true nature. But he also spoke of the incredible potential that lay within him and others like him, the ability to make a real difference in the lives of those around them. As he spoke, the mood in the room began to shift. The commanders, once divided and uncertain, began to nod in agreement, their eyes alight with a new understanding. They saw in Jace not a weapon to be feared, but a symbol of hope, a beacon of what the Alliance could become. And so, with a unanimous vote, the decision was made. Project Genesis would be brought out of the shadows and into the light. The warriors would be given the training and support they needed to master their abilities, but they would also be granted the freedom to choose their own path. Zorax felt a sense of pride and relief wash over him as he watched Jace stand tall before the assembled commanders, a true leader in the making. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But he also knew that with Jace by his side, anything was possible. As the meeting adjourned and the commanders filed out of the room, Zorax turned to Jace with a smile. "You did well today, son," he said, placing a hand on the young warrior's shoulder. "I know it couldn't have been easy, standing up there in front of all those people, but you showed them the truth of who you are and what you can become." Jace returned the smile, his eyes shining with a new sense of purpose. "I couldn't have done it without you, sir," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You've been there for me every step of the way, guiding me, believing in me. I won't let you down." Zorax nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "I know you won't, Jace. Together, we'll forge a new future for the Alliance, one where the Genesis warriors take their rightful place as the guardians of the galaxy. And with you leading the charge, I have no doubt that we'll succeed." As the truth of Project Genesis spread throughout the Alliance, Jace found himself at the center of a whirlwind of change. The once secret program was brought into the light, its participants granted official status as members of the Alliance military. But with that recognition came new challenges, new threats that sought to undermine the fragile peace that had been achieved. Commander Zorax knew that Jace and his fellow Genesis warriors were the key to maintaining that peace. With their incredible abilities and unwavering dedication to the cause of justice, they represented the best hope for a galaxy torn apart by conflict and strife. Under Zorax's guidance, Jace threw himself into his training with a renewed sense of purpose. He honed his psionic abilities to a razor's edge, learning to wield his powers with precision and control. He studied strategy and tactics, absorbing the wisdom of the great military minds of the past. But even as he grew in strength and skill, Jace never forgot the lessons that Zorax had taught him. He knew that true power came not from the ability to destroy, but from the courage to protect, to stand up for those who could not stand up for themselves. As more and more Genesis warriors emerged from the shadows, Jace took on a new role as their leader and mentor. He guided them through their training, helping them to master their abilities and find their place within the Alliance. Together, they formed a tight-knit unit, bound by the shared experience of their unique origins and the sense of purpose that drove them forward. But even as they grew in strength and numbers, the threats to the Alliance only seemed to multiply. Rogue factions and rival powers sought to harness the power of the Genesis warriors for their own ends, seeing them as little more than weapons to be wielded in their quest for dominance. Jace and Zorax found themselves at the forefront of a new kind of war, one fought not just on the battlefields of space, but in the hearts and minds of the people. They worked tirelessly to build bridges between the Genesis warriors and the rest of the Alliance, to show that they were not a threat to be feared, but a force for good in the universe. And slowly but surely their efforts began to bear fruit. The people of the Alliance came to see the Genesis warriors not as monsters or freaks, but as heroes, as shining examples of what humanity could achieve when it dared to reach for the stars. As the years passed, Jace grew into his role as a leader, taking on ever greater responsibilities within the Alliance. But through it all, he never forgot the debt he owed to Commander Zorax, the man who had believed in him when no one else would, who had guided him on the path to his true destiny. And so, when the time came for Zorax to step down from his post, passing the mantle of leadership to a new generation, Jace was there by his side. The two men stood together, watching as the stars wheeled overhead, the endless expanse of the galaxy stretching out before them. "You've come a long way, Jace," Zorax said, his voice filled with pride and affection. "When I first met you, you were just a scared kid with a power you didn't understand. But now look at you, a leader, a warrior, a true hero of the Alliance." Jace smiled, his eyes shining with the light of 1,000 stars. "I couldn't have done it without you, sir," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You gave me a purpose, a reason to fight, and I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life living up to the faith you placed in me." Zorax nodded, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know you will, son, and I'll be watching over you, every step of the way. The future of the Alliance, no, the future of the galaxy itself, rests on your shoulders now. But I have no doubt that you will bear that burden with the same strength and courage that you've shown me all these years." As the two men embraced, the stars above them seemed to shine just a little bit brighter, a testament to the bond they shared and the destiny they had forged together. And though the road ahead was sure to be filled with trials and challenges, Jace knew that he would face them all with the same unwavering determination that had brought him this far. For he was a Genesis warrior, a guardian of the innocent, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that had known far too much darkness. And with the legacy of Commander Zorax to guide him, he would continue to fight for the cause of justice, now and forevermore.